just want to go by our real names, or do you want to make up fake names?
No preference. What do you want to do?
I don't care.
Let's just go by our real names.
All right.
Yeah.
But don't, no
Less
taking
confusing.
anything personal.
Yes,
So if
absolutely
I
not.
hit you, it's totally part of the role play, okay?
You may have to take it personal.
You don't get too Marshall.
Okay, can I say something as we get started?
Absolutely.
I just want to point out, I was doing some math on this issue last night, and
Me too.
excellent. If we go to court, which obviously none of us want to go to court, but the negative impact that is going to have on the clients will be $350,000. That will be the additional attorney's fees. That will be the additional contingency fee, the 20% to 30%. If, to kind of give an example, if the settlement were to be split directly in thirds, that would be $116,666 per client that will be lost. So I think it's, in everyone's best interest to find a settlement today that, suits everyone's needs. Because otherwise we're going to all be in a worse place. I mean, I don't think anyone can overcome that loss in a hearing. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up and help promote the...
Okay, well then let's just say if we don't reach something today, do we want to consider arbitration and maybe, because it'll take out that 50,000 right there and
I think we're all in agreement that it's best to just
not go to court.
not go to court.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how the contracts look. Arbitration may still end up costing the additional an attorney fee,
There'll be some.
and it will in itself cost money.
True, but
For
it's not
paying
going to
our-
cost $150,000 for one day of arbitration.
Well, that's probably true.
And the other thing is, we have the option of not taking the full 30% for one day of arbitration. I'm okay with just sticking with. Now, if it gets into months-long trial, that changes things, and you're going to want the 30%. So, I don't know. So, I mean, like, if we can't come to something that's good for everyone, do we want to just say that we'll try to talk clients into arbitration?
I can certainly take that to my client. I think it depends on how close we get and what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that's an option, but I think all of us agree that negotiating right now and figuring something out right now is the best way to figure this out.
Well, yeah. Also, we have to have something for Hi! All right, sounds good.
Okay. One thing I think might be important is if we kind of go around and discuss, what is at stake for the clients, what is necessary, why, why the settlement is going to be, how it will impact the lives of the clients. Because, from the information that I've seen, I know that, the interests are going to probably be different. I'm assuming that Ms. Barkis is concerned about the emotional loss here. She has lost a child. That she's the only one here that's lost a child. That's got to be difficult. And so, part of this, I think, is a recognition that there's something that can't be replaced that's been taken from her, but just the gesture is important. For your client, there's obviously the concern about 4 children, loss of entire family income. So, security is going to be an important factor, and that's similar with what my client has. But the twist there is that, and I'll go ahead and start, and then y'all can kind of think about what is worth talking about with your clients. But with my client, the lifelong injury is very concerning for her. I don't know if y'all are aware of what the expenses are going to be, but it's $45,000 a year for her to remain in this home with 24-hour care, which she's required to have. It's not an option for her to stay with family. Her only family is out of state, and they can't afford and don't have room to house her. So she's got to find a way to stay in this home for the remainder of her life, which her life expectancy puts her well into the 90s. Both of her parents lived well into their 90s, and she's 72. So we're looking at 20 plus years. She does have some assets, so there's something she can lean on, but, if you look at, she's got 15 years maximum if she liquidated everything and used her entire assets, and that's before any inflation is factored in. So, again, her main concern comes down to security, and I feel like that's what yours is going to be, and I think, it's mostly emotional you know, recognition of the true magnitude of the loss for your client. But I don't, if y'all want to kind of express just the heart of what your clients are feeling or looking for.
Well, I think my client's main concern is also an emotional loss, considering she lost her husband, as well as the fact that they do have 4 children. He was the main provider. She, previously did have a position. Whether or not she's able to actually get that position back at the same salary is, we don't know that. As well as who would take care of her children at that point. And the cost for taking care of 4 children is extensive. She doesn't really have a lot of assets, or, pretty much I think Marty was everything, took care of everything as far as money goes. So I think that's her main concern, is how is she going to provide for her children.
Well, I think Anne's primary concern is just the devastating loss of a husband and a child at the same time. And aside from her own personal pain, she has a daughter who is a twin, so they were very, very close. And I think she's just really concerned about being there for her. So there is a financial component to this as well, although that's not the primary motivating factor here. But I mean, she's just torn up.
Yeah.
I don't know how she's gonna.
Okay.
I mean, how do you put a price tag on that?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that that's one of the things about the court is going to make it difficult in court with, if we do end up going to court, is we're going to have to prove up, life expectancies and lost earnings, pain and suffering. So there's a lot of things that would be very time consuming and require experts in court. So those are things that I think to address here, we're going to have to probably just do gut, instinct. This is what we think would be fair. And then also realize that we're dealing with a limited pool, which in itself is probably not enough to cover any single one of the clients.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in court, if there had not been this limited assets, we would probably all look at walking away with more than $2 million.
Oh, certainly.
So that's, I think, going to be the biggest difficulty here is that.
Well, I think we can go a little bit past gut feeling. I mean, we do have some hard and fast numbers.
Yeah.
We do. I mean, I definitely don't know math, but I tried to make everything, I've run the numbers. We do have some hard and fast. There's a couple of unknowns, though.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what we really can't.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, I was thinking, and tell me if y'all think this would be a fair starting point.
Mm-hmm.
My idea was if we look at the beginning of this being, let's consider an even split into three partitions, and then make justifications for adjustments from there, based on what justifications each client can bring to the table and say, perhaps I should have a larger piece of this pie because this is a concern that I have over what the 1/3 is, and the amount of 1/3 is going to be
$660,000, because that's exactly where I was going to say we should start to.
Yeah.
yes. Now that's $660,000 is before removing the 20% for an attorney's fee, which brings it to actually $533,333. So that is, if a 1/3 split, the client actually walks away with 5,333.33. Okay, and so now the question is, do we, or if so, where do we move this number for each client?
Well, I personally feel my client definitely has, I feel deserves maybe more than the $533,000. Simply because not only did she lose Marty, she also has extensive medical bills along with his death. He was in the hospital for quite some time and had several surgeries. On top of the fact that, she does have 4 children and she is on her own. She doesn't really have any assets or anything else, as in compared to, your client who, has income, has extensive assets, is not really going to be that hurt by whether or not they get the money. I do completely sympathize with the emotional aspect of it, and I'm not saying they don't deserve anything. But you know, I think in comparison to my client, she is definitely in more need of the money.
Okay.
Okay, I think that we need to look at if we went to court with this. I mean, obviously we don't want to, but if we went to court with this, we've got some, like I said, hard and fast numbers that we're working with. You've got the cost of each of the cars, which is pretty negligible, but still the cost of the cars, the medical expenses, past medical expenses, future medical expenses, and then you've got lost earnings. And those are all hard and fast numbers. And I think that that's where it really has hit my client the hardest, is you're looking at a significantly higher future earnings than either. The way I've run the numbers, and I mean, I'll walk you guys through this if you want to see it, is that, I mean, Marty came in kind of in the middle on on all of the different factors here. So I don't think that that's justification for a higher award just based on hard, fast numbers. So let me show you what I've got so you can walk through with me and kind of see where I'm coming from. This is what was not paid by insurance, which is not relevant because I put this full amount right here. So you won't be taking that into account. I was just, when I was running the numbers, that's how I did it. But so you've got your medical expenses, past medical expenses, the cost of the car, then future medical expenses. I based that on the Social Security Administration average of 86 life expectancy. And so that's where I got that number. Then that comes down to what was paid. The other hard and fast number here is going to be lost earnings. And like I said, this is where it kind of, aside from the loss, this is where it's really going to hurt Anne the most because she was really relying on his income. And I left him at $225,000, which is what he was making when he died. He had the potential to earn up close to $500,000, and I think that we could show in trial that he could earn up to $500,000 easily after 10 years. So this number is on the very low end right here. And I left Marty at the same amount, although I think that even if he, got a substantial raise, it still wouldn't be to quite that same $500,000 a year. So then I went life expectancy to 70. I figured most people would retire then. Him for 30, Marty for 40, because he still had quite a bit of life ahead of him. And then figured up minus the taxes and living expenses. I took him as a percentage of family. So there's 4 family members, 1/4. There were 6 family members, he was 1/6. And then those are the numbers that I came up with based on that. Now, the two unknown values here are the pain and suffering and loss of society. Now here, obviously, my client is not going to have any pain and suffering. So I put that at a value 0, then 1, and then, accordingly. Mm-hmm. And then I just plugged in $1 million to kind of get a percentage. So that was even across. So that's what I'm looking at. And I realized that there's some wiggle room here. And I got the percentage based on all the numbers that I put together with percentage of that. So I agree that Marty may have more outright need with that many children, but I think when we look at just the hard and fast numbers in a court case, earnings alone is going to put Anne in a much better position. So,
but I disagree with you that Anne relies on his income. I mean, she last year herself made $150,000.
That's not the standard, though. In a court case, it's not going to be, oh, you already have a job. That's not jury awarded. Like pain and suffering and loss of society, those are jury awards. Compensable damages are hard and fast numbers. That's where you go to the court and say, here's the number, and the court says, okay.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying you said that she relies on him. And I'm just saying I disagree.
Well, I think another factor we need to consider is it is true that there's the lost earnings that's going to be, that you want to look at for Mr. Barkis and for Mr. Clayton. But, one thing that is different is both of your clients are still young. It's very likely they're going to get remarried at some point in the future. And there's going to be, at that point, an additional earning capacity in the family that will change the dynamic, the financial dynamic. Miss Harper is 72. She's wheelchair bound. She is on constant medication making her drowsy. Her quality of life has changed so much that the expectation of her coming into another source of income in the future is not only unlikely, it's very improbable. And so I agree that in a typical case, in a normal situation, lost earnings is going to be a huge factor. As a matter of fact, that's in a personal injury, that's where the bulk of the settlement is going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because we have a limited pie, that we need to consider, not making that as heavy as it would typically be. I mean, because even if we go to trial, jury is going to see the lost earnings factor, but they're also going to see the absolute need of financial security, and I think a jury is going to put that ahead.
Right, but remember, we're not going into trial against each other. We're going into trial against the tortfeasor. So it's not like, okay, jury, split this up for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go in and say award, and then you're going to go in and say award, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a totally different jury each time.
Mm-hmm.
So the merits of your case versus mine, or your case versus mine, is not. That's not relevant. Do you know what I mean? It's just a flat out dollar amount that each jury would award.
I do.
And it's pro rata.
I understand that, but I think that when you're dealing with a jury award, your client's sitting on an asset value of $928,000. Almost $1 million in liquid assets right now. Compared to Miss Clayton, who has $14,000 in assets. I mean, that's going to be a huge difference. And when if a jury were to consider what she should be awarded, I think the $14,000 in assets would become very important in her getting a large jury award. I mean, as large as they can probably conceive. And not to say that the earnings isn't going to be a factor here, but I also think the jury may feel that, Miss Barker is well taken care of, that the insurance, the $760,000 of life insurance puts her in a place of being made somewhat whole, taken care of financially.
Okay, well, let me ask this. Do you think that a jury would award more than $1 million based on pain and suffering? Because completely taking out loss of society claim and a full $1 million on those pain and suffering, you're still looking at we're significantly higher.
I agree that under the law and under the rules of how compensation is awarded, your client is the one who comes out with the highest number most likely. But I think that because we're dealing with such a small number here, there's need that's going to need need of security should trump the idea that the lost earnings here is going to be more significant, especially in light of the fact that she is in her 30s, she's younger, she's
39.
well, but
She could have been 39 a couple of times. You never know.
The likelihood of her, remarrying, of having that additional income in the future is not unheard of. It's very likely that she'll get remarried at some point.
Do you know the stats on getting married over 40?
Terrorism is more likely.
Exactly.
Being a victim of terrorism.
I think that's the statistic for someone who's never been married before 40.
Yes.
It just changed for widows. It's a different statistic. But, again, and she's, she is the only one that's had the life insurance compensation, and that's a very large life insurance compensation. Again, not that she should be penalized for planning ahead. That's not where I'm going. I'm just saying, I think that because of our limited resources, that's something that should be considered.
Yeah.
It is a big difference maker here. You have 4 children who may never get to go to college if they don't have enough means to. With 2-year-olds, you're talking about the daycare alone is going to be a difficult day-to-day expense that's added for Mrs. Clayton to go back to work. For Miss Harper, she has no option. Her only option is that she has to pay $42,000 a year for around-the-clock care.
But something I don't think that you're taking into account is, $100,000 might last 6 months in this family, whereas it would last maybe a year or 2. Or that was at 3 years of Marty's income. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's a different ballgame.
Yeah, I do understand that there is a expectation of quality of life, but again, there's $300,000 or $760,000 life insurance that is available there. It is something that excuse me, making sure that this is
Yeah.
still going. This $760,000 helps with that. I mean, that is money that can help with that. That way of life, keeping her in her house. She has also benefited from the fact that her house has greatly improved in value in a short period of time. That the equity there has grown. That's really not the same situation that either of the other two have based on just their financial placement. The houses they have are in different neighborhoods. They don't appreciate as quickly.
Right, but I mean, still, the jury's not going to look at that. There isn't,
No, I agree. I think that before a jury, separate cases, there's no limited resources. There's going to be large settlements for everyone. But we have a very small sum of money to deal with. And looking at the $533,000, for example, that puts, this is the 1/3. That puts Miss Clayton at 16 years worth of Mr. Clayton's salary. That is in terms of what she would be receiving, how her security would come into place. That could keep them afloat, able to pay the bills and feed her children for 16 years. For Miss Harper, I'll make sure I get this right. It is 11 years of care, which is not even to her life expectancy. That doesn't even put her at flush. I mean, does that make sense? She has spent all of that before she's died, and then she has to come up with another source of income to pay for her required medical treatments. And I think that should be a priority here. I mean, she doesn't have a choice in this matter. She can't adjust. I mean, she's in a wheelchair. She can't bathe herself. She can't feed herself. She can't clothe herself. And her only option is to be with 24-hour nursing care. The only way she can get any government assistance on that is if she has nothing, which means she would walk away the table with absolutely no award here, sell her house, and give the money away. And then she'll get, Medicaid help. She'll be put into a system where it's not a quality system, medical care. Mm-hmm. And so she really is in kind of a difficult place. Her total equity is, including her house and retirements, puts her at $230,000. That's everything that she's worth minus debts. Let me see. I think it was that's about 5 years, I think, of her care. That's wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, 231 divided by 45. It's 5 years. Yeah. It's 5.1 years. So everything that she's worth is gone in 5 years. I think that is, she is very concerned about that factor. And additionally, her late husband, and she had talked about when they paid off their house, a few years back, that their goal was to leave that to their grandchildren. That was their inheritance to leave to their grandchildren. And I think she's really, really concerned about not being able to leave her grandchildren anything. She only sees them a few times a year. In reality, she's not come to grips with this yet, but she's not going to be able to make her 3 visits a year to see her grandchildren. I mean, it's not feasible at this point. She cannot travel herself. It would cost her so much to try and visit them that now she'll only see them when they're able to come see her. And so, there's this emotional problem that if she has to sell the house and can leave nothing to her grandchildren, who she's now alienated from, that is a very real and serious concern that she has. So, again, I don't know how we do address this problem of too little funds, but I think looking at the future, looking at how these 3 clients are going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's a lot to be said about the $760,000 life insurance that helps make your client whole. I think that we should put everyone as close to this 1/3 as we can.
I
But-
agree with you. And I'll be honest, I don't think she's going to accept anything less than that. So, I mean,
Then a third.
I think so. I agree. I don't even know if I'll be honest with you, I really don't know if she'll even think that.
Mhm.
I mean, I can go to her with the, you think of the children,
Mhm.
argument, but, no, it's almost kind of like a matter of principle.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping even that I can talk her into arbitration just based on the fact that we'd honestly, aside from the withdrawal of funds, we do better in court.
Mhm.
But I don't want to go that route because that's $50,000. That's over a year's worth of life. You know what I mean? Expenses for either of you. And I don't think that's fair. And I really don't. I think I can talk her out of that.
My concern with arbitration is I don't think I can suggest that to my client because I don't see it being any different than court.
Well, cheaper. It's
I really don't think it is cheaper. Arbitration today, it can be just as expensive as court, and what you get is someone who's not a judge that makes a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're going to be spending comparable amounts of money, which you're dealing with the $50,000 a person, to do an arbitration, we're probably going to need 3 arbitrators. You're looking at spending a large. I think we still spend a large sum. We're still going to need experts. We're still going to need to have these court expenses. It'd be one thing if this was going to be a relaxed arbitration, but I don't think a relaxed arbitration is going to work here. If her concern is that technically under the law she deserves more, then we're going to have an arbitration for her to be satisfied. It will have to be an arbitration that mirrors a courtroom.
Mhm.
And so, again, in that situation, I don't know why it would. I just think court is the way to go. I don't want to push anything upon my client that is a different idea that's still going to cost money, and then have to justify why we did that over court. And additionally, I can't in good faith suggest to do anything besides try to settle or go to court because it's default when you're talking about losing such a large percentage of this small amount of money. Dealing with $350,000. That's $116,000 from the 1/3 split. That is, that's 3.5 years of salary for Mr. Clayton. That is 2 years of care in this around. I mean, it cuts into need too much.
I agree.
So I think I just would not be able to, in good conscience, advise my client to even consider it. I mean, it's just too costly. I do hope that we can come to some sort of understanding with your client to, just understand that the consequences for Miss Harper would be that she's going to be, she'll sell everything she owns. She's going to end up being with no care, nowhere to live. She'll probably end up in a state hospital, like being checked into some sort of, asylum is really the only option she'll have when she runs out of money. That or to use whatever she has to buy her daughter a bigger house, but then they're going to have to take on an extra burden. Her daughter doesn't have anyone to watch for her, so she still have to hire a private nurse, which I don't know, the expenses there are going to be huge and cut into whatever amount she has as well. So we run into the same problem either way, which is that she has a lot of life left ahead of her and just no funds to take care of it. And I do think that, Miss Clayton's children are in a much different situation. They don't have $750,000 to help them go to college. Mm-hmm. I know they've got a expectation of a life with, nice things, and I don't think they are deprived of that from his loss of income. It's not the same, but they still have a lot of income to rely on. They still have a very expensive house in an exclusive neighborhood. the Claytons are going to be on the borderline of homelessness here. I mean, they've got to pay the bills. I did the math. They have 5 months from the date of the accident before they're out of money, before they are on the streets. And so going to court can be problematic there because that can last longer than 5 months. They may end up on the street before this is settled. And so I think those are things that, I don't know how we address them other than we've got to find a way to just address them face on.
Well, I mean, is there any way we can make this pie bigger? Is there anything that we're missing that could,
I mean, they even mentioned in here that, I mean, this company doesn't really have assets, so I don't really see how.
it wouldn't even cover the court costs to go after them?
Yeah, no, there's not a way of making the pie bigger with the insurance company at all, or with the roofing company. Are there other things involved here that can help our clients, though? I guess that's the question. Is there something else that our clients can be satisfied with? And I don't know. I mean, I know for my client, I can't think of anything from Ms. Harper because of the fact that, I mean, what she's really looking at is enough money to keep herself from being institutionalized and to keep herself from leaving her children with absolutely nothing when she passes. So I don't know. And I can't speak for y'all's clients.
I mean, I personally believe that my client is looking to just be able to pay the bills and put food on the table at this point. I mean, until she can figure something else out. Because I don't think any amount of money is really gonna, protect her for the rest of her life and take care of her children. But at this point, I don't think that court is an option.
Well, I can't go back to Anne. I know what she's expecting. She's expecting a large percentage of this because she lost two very important people to her.
Yeah.
So I can't go back to her with anything less than a third. I really can't.
Yeah.
Not in good conscience. Unless I can sweeten the deal with something else, and I can't think of a darn thing.
Well, yeah, and I do agree with that. I mean, I think that's the problem we're all going to have is approaching our clients with anything less than a third is going to be a hard sell.
I agree.
I do think our most potential for lowering one of these settlements sum would be with your client. And I only say that because I think financially she can find a way to make do. I think emotionally is where her payment is going to be most valuable anyway. What I don't know is how so where do we go? What can we do? And one thing I thought was if there could be some sort of, I mean, I would think the hardest part for her emotionally would be the loss of a child. I mean, loss of a husband is hard. My client lost her husband. She spoke about how difficult it is. She's thought about y'all's clients and how hard that must be. But she said, and I agree, losing a child, it's unimaginable. It's got to just be the worst thing. And that, with that in mind, are there creative ways that we can help with that pain? I don't know.
Take one of yours.
Well,
I'll give you a couple. It'll be all right.
That would help her. That'd help your client out. That'd help my
Exactly.
client
Good
out.
go.
Everybody would be happy.
well, one
And then you could come to your grandma. So you could come to your grandma. It'd be perfect.
It's just all moving together.
Big happy family.
I do know that one thing I was thinking of, I don't know how to do it, and maybe y'all can help. A foundation in her son's memory, somehow to have some sort of foundation that can help with grieving parents. I mean, if that makes sense, or grieving siblings. I mean, her daughter's also going to be a big concern. But where that comes from, I don't know. I mean, I know I could talk to my client about, having some sort of, when she does pass with her will, maybe she could split her house between her children and a foundation. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
because I think that does still help her feel emotionally connected to what she's done with her estate, as opposed to spending it on nursing care. You know, and say she has 100, you know, if she goes early and has $100,000 of the settlement left, again, putting that into this foundation, I think she would be more than happy to do that. I do think that she would want to at least be able to say, I give my house to my grandchildren, at least in the 50% range of that house.
Mhm.
So if it has to be sold, that would be something that's very important to her, but I think that she would be willing to consider. I don't know how that looks, though. I mean, because what does that do now? What does that do for your client today? And that I'm not sure. But maybe what we could do is take a portion of the settlement to create a foundation and keep it running for a period of time. Maybe, let's be creative. Let's say $150,000. That's what, minus attorney's fees, court costs would have been. $150,000 could keep a foundation if it's built on counseling and resources for families that have lost children afloat for probably at least 10 years.
No, not when you look at salaries. Once you have volunteers.
Well, you know, but I think that this could be run with for the time being, a handful of employees. I also think that, you know, we can try to do things to build awareness and get fundraising going on it. And so then it becomes more self-sufficient.
I think that $150,000 would absolutely last a substantial amount of time. I mean, I worked for a foundation for several years, and I mean, we ran off $35,000 for like 3 years. So
the
Did you
nonprofit,
pay salaries?
we
You all
had
volunteer?
we had mainly volunteers. We had a couple people that were salary, but I mean, we ran off a very small amount.
I worked for a nonprofit that had 2 employees and a lot of volunteers. It ran off $50,000 a year. Now, that was a different type of nonprofit organization, so I don't know how it applies because the salaries were higher there than I think they would need to be for the. Well, it depends, right? It depends on who the volunteers are because I think counseling is going to be a big element of something like this. So, counselors, if they're the volunteers, lowers the cost because an administrator could be someone who doesn't even necessarily need a college degree, someone that just knows how to organize and contact people. And so you could have maybe 1 or 2 people at $20,000 to $30,000 a year, and so that could get it at least 5 or 6 years. And you're still not looking at the fundraising element. That, you know, again, it could grow within the fundraising element. But that still leaves us with this question of, you know, if we pull that out, what is that bias? What does that move this table? Another creative option might be maybe we can do the foundation, and if Miss Clayton is interested, maybe she could run it. Maybe this could be a job for her.
Absolutely.
Because it is something that deals with children. Maybe it could have a built-in daycare as far as the other employee be someone that's there to help with the children, so you could have your 2 young children with you. The older ones are in school, or she could have hers. I believe the older ones are in school.
Yeah.
One of them is, and one will soon be in school.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sure the 4-year-old's probably in preschool.
Yeah, so I think that helps with some of this too. I don't know how my client can help. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing. My client is just unable to really do much other than, like I said, I think she is going to be willing to make a contribution when her security is no longer needed. When she passes, I think that she would, as long as she can leave something substantial to her grandchildren, I think she would leave the rest of her assets to this foundation.
See, so we're looking at 150 if we don't go to saved, if we don't go to trial.
And you know, let me redo the math too, because let's see what that leaves the 1/3 with. The 1/3, because when I did the $350,000, that included the increase in attorney's fees. So this will change. It's minus. Okay. Oh, here's what I need all clear. Okay, so you have $2 million minus 150,000 is 185. 1,850,000 divided by 3 equals 616, and then 10% of that would be 62,000 times 2 is $120,000 per attorney. So minus 120, that's a little under 500,000 on a one-third split. It's $496,000 is what would be left to split among the 3 clients after deducting the 20% contingencies. So it's going to cost them effectively $35,000 apiece out of this one-third split. So I think that is not, I mean, it is a big chunk out of the pie, but it's something that's productive. It helps 2 of the 3 clients achieve something that they were looking for, I think. But what does it buy us? So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a really, really good idea. I don't know how we'd make those numbers work. If I can figure, man, I think.
What amount do you think would make your client comfortable to start it with? Because again, I think that this is the kind of thing that we can fundraise for. So if we want to keep it afloat at least, I think 5 years. I think once it's been around 5 years, it'll have a donation base. The first years are the hardest for nonprofits, for volunteer groups, but after that, I think people that have benefited from it will start volunteering for it. I think that the word will spread, and again, I think if our focus for this group is to really be there for families that have lost children, including siblings, that it's going to be a very strong organization.
Yeah. And it could give something for Anne to kind of throw herself into to deal with the grief.
I agree.
And I know that your client has twins, so this might be something that
Absolutely.
And I think it again would help with Miss Clayton if she wants to take a job there. I think that gives her some security, and it reduces the cost of daycare since it is going to be somewhat child focused. Part of that running it will be for someone that's there for children. So there'll be a lot of group activities, a lot of therapy that your kids can sit in on when necessary. It might just be an open environment where they can just be there in your office with you. I don't know.
Right.
At least until they get school age. So what do we think 5 years requires? Maybe 150 is too low. Do we need 200,000, you think?
See, I disagree. I think that gives you a great starting off point, and that can last you a few years. And fundraisers alone, I mean, you host one golf tournament, you can raise $100,000 in one day.
Yeah.
You know.
I'd probably feel a little more comfortable with 250 though. It gives you a budget of 50,000 per year. You know.
250 still puts us at less than the cost of court. Right. I mean, so that if we consider 250. I still think that's not unreasonable as a thought, but then to look at, well, let's think about this. What if Miss Clayton is interested? What could the salary be to make this? I think it would have to be at least $33,000 for her because that's what their family's been living on.
Yeah.
So if we have that at $33,000 a year, and then we're going to need another employee. Right.
Which you could have someone who's just a volunteer and pay them $8 an hour.
It can be 10. I think we can look at 10,000 for the second employee. So let's say $43,000 a year. How far does that go with 250?
43. That gives you $7,000 a year. Is $35,000 extra.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm wondering how many years that goes. So like 250,000. Divided by 43,000.
And don't forget your overhead.
Well, no, that's true. I'm just thinking.
If you do, so what did we say? 43,000.
Yeah, that would be the cost of employee, and then
Times
then
5
we need a location. Yeah, 5.8 years is how long that'll fund employees. Well, I tell you what. Here's a thought where my client can help out. For the first 5 years, she's not living in her home. We can use this as a place, an office. I mean, it is in a residential area, but because of the nature of this organization, it's a 3-bedroom home. It's a 2-bath. It's a pretty good size house. It would be enough to have rooms for counseling sessions, for group therapy sessions. She's got a big backyard, so she can offer that up for the rest of her life to be used by the organization as needed.
And then
as the organization grows, if it builds its own facilities, I think she would still be willing to use it as if someone needed, if it needed for other events, maybe weekend retreats or maybe, I don't know, whatever the organization would find useful. Again, she's going to need to move her belongings out, but I think that's something where her daughter can help. Maybe her daughter can help her put her belongings somewhere. And so that will help with overhead, at least in the beginning. And so we're looking at, I think, going a long ways with this money. So that's, I mean,
Can't do math very fast.
it's 1.750. Okay, so let me make a proposal and see what you think.
Okay.
Ms. Harper signs a deed covenant to give a life estate of her home to this organization. We offer $250,000 as an initial seed money. Ms. Clayton agrees and takes a job paying $33,000 a year, which has a built-in daycare component. And then we can leave Ms. Harper with $750,000. And then I'll deduct mine out of that, but that puts her at a little over the original 1/3 point. That leaves $1 million that your two clients can decide how the best way to split that would be.
I'll tell you what, instead of doing that, I think, let's see, how could we do that? I like where this is going. I want to tweak the numbers a little bit,
Sure.
but I like where this is going. What do you think that your client's gonna? What are your concerns?
I just think that, after I see where you're coming from, that maybe she does deserve a little more since she's giving up her home and putting money into this foundation. So I understand that. As far as the $1 million that's left for you and I to split, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that a lot of my clients' issues are going to be covered by this foundation. So I don't want to lowball her, but I think if we've got a place for it to go, if your client's willing to work there, if not, I'm sure we can find someone else. But if we can put $250,000 for the foundation, we've got a house for it for life estate, and then also if we can put in there anything that's left, if anything is left of that $750, it goes back to the
Absolutely,
foundation.
yes.
I think I could probably work out a deal for like $750 for your client, maybe, and then we can take the $250.
Okay.
I don't know. How does that?
I think that's reasonable. I think if you agree that the rest goes into the foundation after she's done, and then she's
not telling
gone.
anyone we said that.
She's gone, whatever,
So
I think that's reasonable.
This sounds like at least something that would be a fair proposal to take the clients, right?
Yes.
It would be a foundation that starts, very quickly. It gives your client a job, at least in the near future, for a while, and then if she moves on ever, that can be replaced. The foundation continues. There's a life estate in this home, so there's at least for the next several years a place that is free to use to help with overhead.
And then your client's concerned about.
And then she can leave. She can leave her home, but then all of the rest of the money can be donated back into that foundation. And I think that would be. I think she would go with that.
And it gives my client some closure. And
yes.
Something to
So let's do this. Does someone want to draft this up in a proposal, and then we can take it to the clients? Because I think that puts everyone in a good place.
Yeah.
Your client has a job, and then there's a good amount of money to help take care of those children. Your client has gotten a huge emotional payment, and I think more than anything, because it's also going to help with her daughter, that's going to go a long ways. And then my client has got the security she needs, but she's also got that guarantee that she can leave her house to her grandchildren, which is one of her biggest concerns. And then everything else she has no need for, so she's happy to give all that's left over back. And I think that amount is big enough that there will still be a good amount left. Because if she lives into her 90s, that still would only be about $600,000.
And even so, I mean, like that would cover it, even if nothing goes back into it. But I think it's
The idea, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because, again, there's no reason to want to leave any of the settlement to her family. She only wants to leave the house.
Okay.
And I would like, if it's okay with everyone, I think we should name the foundation after Ms. Barkis' son.
I agree. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean,
Good.
I just think that that would be great.
Okay. Let's see how this works. I've got $250,000 to the foundation, named after son. $750,000 to Madeline. $750,000 to Miss Clayton. $250,000 to Anne. A life estate in
Yes.
Madeline's house to the foundation. Any remainder of the settlement, if
Is
there is any
donated.
remainder, is donated to the foundation. You work there for as long as you would like until we figure that out. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, find someone else. And then daycare will be part of the foundation. Am I forgetting anything? Is there anything else we need to add to this?
I think that covers everything that my client would be concerned about. And I think my client would be very, here's another thing I think this will work for my client for. She has become depressed because of her loss in abilities. She used to go running a lot. She used to go volunteer a lot. I think she might want to come help volunteer. I mean, I think she might be able to come spend time every day there because she's still cognitively very much aware and able to help with coping. And she's been through loss, and so she can maybe help with some of these group therapies, or at least as far as just participating in them. And I think that's going to give her a kind of a second lease on life at this point. I think it'll also give her family reasons to want to come up and visit to see what's been going on. So I really hope that this is going to be agreeable because
It sounds like a good idea.
I agree.
How do you feel your client's going to go?
I think that it's absolutely a reasonable offer for her. Not only that, it takes away, her having to figure out, her job position and daycare for her children, so that resolves that issue for her, as well as giving her money to, take care of her house and her kids and whatnot. So I think it's a reasonable offer.
I guess another thing we should go ahead and mention, just dawned on me, is that we'll probably want a board for this.
Yeah.
And so maybe the three clients will be on the board, and then maybe they can elect a few other people, and one of us can, or maybe we can all get together and draft something to kind of set this up. But I think them having lifetime board positions would be good.
Yeah. I mean, they've all been through the same accident, so I think it's something that definitely would bond them together.
Excellent.
With the foundation being.
I feel very good about this. I think this is going to be
I hope it works.
really good. Yeah, I mean that's all we can hope for. But I think this at least is something that everyone can find fair and leaves everyone cared for.
Yes.
Okay, I can draft that up
Okay.
and send that out to you guys. Or y'all.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Never know us from Austin, saying you guys. Okay, well, I didn't think that was gonna. I didn't
I didn't either.
So I'm very, very happy.
I'm really glad I
we
said,
solved-
let's make the pie bigger.
Right?
I love pie.
Right?
All right, guys. Well, appreciate
All right,
it.
it's a pleasure doing business.